In the NFL, it can backfire if you get too attached.
I love you. Love you too.
Pro football is a cutthroat business. There's just far too much money changing hands to put personal relationships over the countless other aspects that go into managing a roster and a franchise. That's just the cold truth.
I truly have enjoyed being your quarterback.
But for every rule, there's also an exception.
Yeah. Chance to reunite with Arthur. Yeah. What's your reaction to that?
I'm like, man, let's make this happen right now.
Let's go.
Let's make this happen right now.
You know I'm such a fool for you.
Against all odds, Pittsburgh OC Arthur Smith has reunited with his former tight end Jonnu Smith once again, making the Steelers the third separate team that the two have found each other on. It seems like no matter what happens in their respective careers, they just find a way to stay intertwined. Coaches having a clear bias towards a player is nothing new, but parting ways multiple times just to eventually end up together in the end is not a thing that happens in the NFL. It's a thing that happens in Hallmark movies. So if we want to unpack this, see Jonnu Smith as only Arthur Smith sees him, then we need to go back. All the way back.
I just think about that time we met at the Senior Bowl when I was 21 years old.
Yes, the 2017 Senior Bowl. Maybe not the most glamorous meet cute, but it is a realistic one. At the time, Arthur had just completed his first season as tight ends coach for the Tennessee Titans, and Jonnu was an impressive athlete coming out of Florida International, although he'd mostly flown under the radar.
The Tennessee Titans select Jonnu Smith, tight end, Florida International.
6'2.5", 248 from FIU. Competes well enough. More of a move, H-back.
Competes well enough. That's not what you'd call a glowing review, but Jonnu had made something of a name for himself as FIU's all-time yardage leader at tight end, a feat he'd achieved even despite having his junior and senior seasons both being cut short. Coming into the league as an understudy to the veteran Delanie Walker, Jonnu's rookie year got off to an understandably slow start, but there were flashes of potential for those paying attention.
We're going to screen it to Jonnu Smith, who's got room. 30, 20, 15, 10, 5, end zone. Touchdown!
Unfortunately, Jonnu would sustain a knee injury in the playoffs that year, with a torn MCL not only ending his season, but causing some concern due to the fact that he had sustained a similar injury in his opposite knee while at FIU. But by the middle of year 2, Jonnu had fully recovered both his strength and his confidence, and he began piecing together respectable performances, including a more than respectable 61-yard reception in Week 12.
And look at Jonnu Smith! All the way inside the 10 and into the end zone!
Gliding through the second and third level like that, just making it look effortless at that size, is special, something you only see in the very best athletes at the tight end position. So Arthur knew he had a diamond in the rough here. And while we're on the topic of special size and speed combined, Jonnu was not the only Titan making a name for himself.
40, 30, he's on his feet, big chase, 20, 15, 10, 5.
It just rules. There's nothing negative to say about this play.
Touchdown!
Except for the fact that Jonnu Smith tore his MCL while he was blocking for it. Again, in the same knee. That is absolutely brutal, not only physically, but mentally for a player that was just hitting his stride. But injury or not, setback or not, one man in particular kept the faith through it all. And heading into 2019, Arthur Smith would also be promoted to offensive coordinator, opening the door to a whole world of potential for Jonnu.
You know, he was the guy that I was with. I came in with my rookie year, so me and I got that bond, and, you know, he knows the type of player I am and how to coach me, and, you know, he knows what situations I need to be put in, so I feel that's a huge advantage.
Arthur Smith's philosophy as a play caller is derived from the Shanahan Church of outside zone runs and marrying their success to your play-action pass game. But Artie's personal spin on this is his deep love for the big fellas. He takes these concepts and runs them out of a handful of heavy, condensed sets, multiple tight ends, where there's not much difference between the look of your runs and the look of your passes. With the right pieces, specifically in that tight end room, you're perfectly camouflaged. With the wrong pieces, however, it sucks ass. So in summary, Jonnu was the key to all of this.
Tannehill looking to throw. Plenty of time. Wide open. Jonnu Smith
for the touchdown. Jonnu Smith. Tannehill tosses end zone. Oh! Jonnu Smith!
Over the back half of 2019 and all of 2020, he averaged over 41 yards per game whenever he saw at least 3 targets and racked up 12 touchdowns over those 2 seasons. Maybe not super eye-popping, but on a team with Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown, Jonnu consistently knocked down whatever they were setting up, contributing as both a major red zone weapon and an open field threat on his scheme touches.
That's a very difficult position, and we put a lot on Jonnu ever since he's been here.
Now, some people familiar with the Ballad of Arthur and Jonnu, especially Falcons fans and fantasy football players, will squirm hearing the words Jonnu Smith and schemed touches put side by side. But the thing is, while Art would get a little trigger-happy further down the road, Jonnu Smith is the exact type of athlete you need to scheme touches to. He's not big for a tight end, and his run blocking does suffer as a result, but players standing 6'3", 250 that can outrun a whole defense off of a toss play just don't grow on trees. Somehow, the Titans roster had 2 of them, and they used them both to punch a ticket to the AFC Championship in 2019, and then follow that up by winning their division for the first time in over a decade in 2020. Through it all, Arthur and Jonnu had patiently climbed the mountain together, and their success had raised each other's profiles enough to start receiving opportunities neither had even dreamed of. Arthur was getting calls for head coaching gigs, and Jonnu, now entering free agency off his rookie contract, was getting calls offering historic money. There was only one problem. These calls were coming from very different area codes.
The Patriots have a new tight end. Now, former Titan Jonnu Smith, according to reports, they reached an agreement.
The Falcons have hired former Titans offensive coordinator Arthur Smith as the team's new head coach.
In January 2021, the Falcons hired Arthur Smith to be their head coach, and 2 months later, Jonnu Smith signed a 4-year contract with the New England Patriots, including the most money ever guaranteed at signing to a tight end in history. For 2 individuals that were total unknowns in the football world when they first met, these are some incredibly steep and impressive jumps in just a couple seasons. But sometimes you get so caught up in the next big thing, you don't realize how good you had it until it's too late. Whether it was due to chronic heartbreak or something else, the next 2 years would mark a low point for both of our beloved Smiths. Jonnu failed to find his footing on a Patriots offense still reeling from a breakup of their own, and Arthur found that offensive success without Jonnu, and also Derrick Henry, was significantly harder to come by. Not only did Jonnu not evolve into one of the most productive tight ends in the NFL, he couldn't even evolve into the most productive tight end on the Patriots, with Hunter Henry, who signed a couple days after Smith, finishing both 2021 and 2022 with over double his yardage total. But despite Jonnu's letdown, at least the Patriots somehow made the playoffs. Down in Atlanta, Arthur wasn't able to get his team above 500 at literally any point during his first 2 seasons, finishing 7-10 in both. The Falcons clung to the dying flame of Matt Ryan, then used Marcus Mariota as a bridge quarterback for Desmond Ridder. 7-10 may have been the ceiling case, but Arthur was grasping at straws for anything that could transport him back to the old days, back when his offense was humming and people weren't tweeting that he looked like a monkey who had been turned into a man by a wizard. So, Arthur tossed New England a 7th-round pick to reunite him with Jonnu.
And when I walked through those doors, I was like, I'm home.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm home. Like, I'm home. You know what I mean?
I just got chills right there.
I was like, I'm home.
Hey, this guy seems excited, but most others remained unconvinced, because to that point, Arthur Smith's desire for an offense made up of positionless, hybrid players was looking more like a collection of misfit toys. Smith's very first draft pick, 4th overall in 2021, had been, you guessed it, a positionless tight end, and Kyle Pitts' early struggles to live up to his billing as a generational talent quickly swung the criticism towards his coach. Those voices certainly didn't get any quieter when the Falcons drafted a running back 8th overall in 2023, and then proceeded to give him only 53% of the team's carries in his rookie season. The man was spending premium picks on positions that historically just aren't worth them, and then he didn't even lean on them as the team started consistently losing. Arthur was going to utilize whoever Arthur wanted, and you know who he wanted.
Play action, he's got a wide open man, Smith bobbles it, but he's got it! To the end zone, and it is caught! Touchdown! Jonnu Smith!
Gonna beat the blitz. Smith! Loose! Jonnu Smith! He's taking it all the way in for a Falcon touchdown!
Sure, the Falcons may have finished 7-10 for the 3rd straight year in a row, and sure, Arthur Smith threw a tantrum after getting pantsed with a playoff berth on the line, but f*** it, we are so back. Jonnu Smith finished the 2023 season 15th among all NFL tight ends in receiving yards, despite being the number 2 tight end on the Falcons, and he finished the year setting career highs in targets, receptions, and yardage. The Falcons absolutely lapped the field in their usage of multiple tight end sets, with Jonnu back in Arthur's hands, operating out of either 12, 13, or 22 personnel an astonishing 59.5% of the time, almost 200 plays more than the team in second place. Arthur Smith may have struggled to get the most out of Bijan Robinson, or Kyle Pitts, or Drake London, but you gotta admit there's something beautiful in the fact that he was able to generate a career year for Jonnu Smith without even blinking. Of course, due to the first half of that sentence, Jonnu kind of unfairly got caught up in the barrage of criticism that was directed at his coach, something that had not been helped by Arthur Smith scheming up some real galaxy brain plays in the red zone just to force the ball into his hands. But while detractors claimed he was just getting force-fed, Jonnu had made clear strides in rounding out his game as a receiver, looking much more natural in settling down into soft spots in zone coverage and playing more of a traditional safety blanket role for an offense that really needed one. But sadly, the Atlanta Falcons had not hired Arthur Smith to rejuvenate Jonnu's career. They'd hired him to win football games, and that had not been happening. So Arthur Smith found himself without a job less than 24 hours after the Falcons' 2023 finale, and the team, likely wanting a fully clean break, released Jonnu Smith just a month later. Yes, I know, that meant another breakup, and this time it didn't even have the happy circumstances of massive contracts and new opportunities. They both landed on their feet, Arthur as offensive coordinator for the Steelers, and Jonnu Smith signing with the Dolphins. For the Steelers, who live for hat-on-hat big boy football, Arthur Smith honestly felt like a perfect match in terms of identity. While he did use fewer multi-tight end sets in Pittsburgh than he had with Jonnu, the Steelers were still an unmistakably Arthur Smith offense, establishing the run whether it wanted to be established or not. Meanwhile, in sunny South Florida, Jonnu Smith's breakup rebound was way more eventful. Now playing in Mike McDaniel's scheme, which is another Shanahan byproduct, Jonnu was not only asked to be the main weapon at tight end, somehow he ended up being asked to be the main weapon for the Miami Dolphins.
Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith. Look, here goes Jonnu Smith.
That's Smith, who's become a favorite around here.
Yeah, no one expected or prepared for this. Of all the words you could use to describe Jonnu Smith's game, high volume has never been one of them. But out of necessity, he became an absolute vacuum as co-stars Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both dealt with injuries and never managed to fully look like themselves. Toss in poor offensive line play and 4 different quarterbacks, and you got a recipe for Jonnu Smith showcasing what a passing attack looks like with him as the centerpiece. He shattered his career highs in nearly every receiving category and even ended up named to his first Pro Bowl as an alternate. Again, we're dealing with a situation where the offense on the whole was not working, but Jonnu was, which kind of makes it seem like Jonnu is this vampire that can only succeed at the expense of his team. But ultimately, Jonnu's production in Miami was really just a scaled-up version of what he'd been doing with Arthur Smith. Pre-snap motion, screen passes to generate yak, extra emphasis in the red zone, and then a whole bunch of dump-offs added on top. Mike McDaniel was shamelessly reaping the Jonnu harvest that Arthur Smith had planted seed by seed. It had to be infuriating, maybe even worse than that wizard monkey tweet. And if he wanted to be able to live with himself, then Art couldn't just stand by and watch this happen.
ESPN reporting the Steelers are getting all-pro cornerback Jalen Ramsey and Pro Bowl tight end Jonnu Smith.
What can you say? The heart wants what the heart wants, man. Sure, Pittsburgh brought in Aaron Rodgers, sure the trade for Jonnu also netted them Jalen Ramsey, but what actually matters here is that Art got his guy back. And with the departure of George Pickens leaving just one bona fide threat at wide receiver in that room, Arthur Smith has spent this summer fiendishly rubbing his hands together at the thought of doing some real freaky shit in 4 tight end sets. If I were a Steelers fan, I'm not sure how I'd be feeling about this, but as a neutral observer and John Thur Smith enjoyer, I'm personally very excited to see what Artie cooks up in 2025 for his main man. We're likely to see a lot of Jonnu Smith on the field one way or another, out of sheer necessity if nothing else, but if there's anything I've learned from this fascinating dynamic, it's that Arthur Smith's belief in Jonnu's talent was never all that crazy from the start. Obsessive? Maybe, but justified in the end, even when nobody else saw it but him. And ultimately, in football, in life, anywhere really, what more can you ask for than a relationship like that?
I guess first off, how instrumental do you think Art was in getting you here in that deal, and did he get in their ear a little bit to make that happen?
Man, that's it's kind of been a part of the story of my career.